baby, this was a good chapter. Alright, so I'm going to try to organize my thoughts here. I'll go very briefly through what happened in this chapter so that I can get to the parts that I really cared about. So first of all, Red is looking for Green because she stole his badges. Second of all, Team Rocket is also looking for Green because she stole something from them, like a floppy disk with some information on a very specific Pokemon, which I'll get to later. Red basically infiltrates Team Rocket so he can find out more information on where the whereabouts of Green. They end up finding her and confronting her to get the floppy disk, and she battles them. It's revealed that Red isn't actually one of their team members, and it basically, both Red and her basically fight their way to get away from Team Rocket. And it ends up being with her tricking them into thinking that she ends up tricking Team Rocket into thinking that they got the floppy disk back, but they did not. So yeah. So and then it ends with them at Team Rocket's hideout, which is the game corner, and she wants to infiltrate again to like maybe get more information. I don't know. But that's basically the main flow of the chapter. First of all, okay, so there's a couple things that I really wanted to talk about in this review. Green is amazing. I love Green. I think she's probably currently my favorite character out of all the characters that we've seen in this entire series so far. I'm really sad that she wasn't in any of the other facets of the show or the game. I guess technically in some capacity the main Green is in Fire Red and Leaf Green, but whatever. But Green in this is actually really cool. In the last chapter, she kind of seemed, I don't want to call her one-dimensional, but like she kind of seemed like she had she was just like, oh, like kind of, she was a con woman, and that was her thing, and I wanted to see more from her. She seemed like she was going to be kind of a bitch, but I knew from the start that she'd probably change to some degree, and it turns out she did. So in this chapter, it turns out that she had not only had she stolen Red's badges, which I don't know if they even resolved that in this chapter. But she also stole a floppy disk. That's basically a big memory card for kids, youngin' kids out there that don't know what a floppy disk is. And the floppy disk on it had information on the Pokemon Mew, which we knew Team Rocket was all about capturing Mew since like the very first chapter. That was like I think that was the very first chapter of this series, where Red runs into Team Rocket and they're going after Mew. But it's got all this information on Mew, presumably like certain whereabout information and certain data in general on Mew. Now, that brings me to my next point. So, okay, so I'll get to that in a second, though. Back to Green. She's got 3 Pokemon as of now that we know. She's got her Wartortle, which we met in the last chapter. Cool. Which she presumably stole from Professor Oak, which is not cool. She also has a Jigglypuff, which, first of all, in order to get away from Team Rocket at the very end of this chapter, Jigglypuff like expands. Like I know that Jigglypuff's thing is where like it can kind of suck in a bunch of air, kind of like Kirby can, which is kind of like in Smash Brothers. They're both like the small pink ball things that could puff up. But basically Jigglypuff gets really big and they use it as a balloon to escape. So that was cool. But her other really interesting Pokemon is Ditto. And in this chapter, it didn't seem like anybody knew what Ditto could do. Because when she throws Ditto out to fight one of the Grunt's Pokemon, which was a Tauros, everybody was like, there's just like some slime on the ground. What the fuck is that? Oh, drop the F-bomb. But yeah, what the heck is that? And the grunt didn't seem too worried about it, and Red was just kind of like, I've never seen that before. And the Tauros and Ditto end up falling off a cliff, sort of, I guess. And before you know it, Tauros comes climbing up, and the grunt's like, you don't think that would be like enough to take out my Tauros? And then it turns out the Tauros is actually Ditto, because Ditto transformed. And I don't know, Ditto, and I've never been interested in Ditto in the games. Ditto is a cool Pokemon, but like other than for breeding, I've never been interested in using it because it's so specifically dependent on what Pokemon you're going up against. It's not really like, I don't know, you can't really use it for a whole lot, and unless you know specifically what you're going up against and you have a plan to use Pokemon versus same Pokemon versus the same Pokemon. But in this, it seems really interesting. It's a nice surprise, especially if the opponent doesn't know what Ditto is or what it does. And it's very similar in the anime and whatnot, where Ditto is kind of a weird Pokemon, but when used right, Ditto can be really cool. And I suppose you could say that about the game too, but I don't know. I'm not really into that, except for breeding. But yeah, so those are her 3 Pokemon. All very cool Pokemon. Green is just so cool, honestly. I love Green. I think Green is super cool. She's really smart and snarky. She's witty too. She ends up using Red's badges as earrings, and she even uses his line about how, like, you can't beat somebody who's won 2 whole badges, which also seems like a thing that Ash once said in the anime. But yeah, so that's really cool. I like Green as a whole. I'm looking forward to seeing more of Green. There's a whole other thing. So Green is super cool. I'm looking forward to seeing that. But there's a whole other part of this chapter that is, it's so interesting. Okay, so, like I said, Green stole a floppy disk that had a bunch of information on Mew. And the reason why Team Rocket had this floppy disk is because they need Mew so that they can complete their experimental Pokemon Mewtwo. And we get a picture of Mewtwo half done, like it's missing a leg and part of its arm or something, and it's all like it's chained up in a big tube, and they're still creating it. This is super cool. And I wonder why they would do it in the game corner, but like they have a lab down in the game corner, and they're creating Mewtwo out of the cell, like the fossilized cells or whatever that they got from Mew at one point, and now they need real Mew so that they can finish the experiment. And I just find the whole Mewtwo being created by Team Rocket is such an interesting thing, because it's such a creation that's against God. It's not a natural Pokemon, and Mewtwo is such a sad Pokemon in itself. It's not like Porygon, where it's like, yeah, it's created by humans, but like ultimately it's a Pokemon that it is what it is. It's created entirely of data almost, and that just happened to be pushed into the real world. But Mewtwo is like, it's a creation that doesn't have purpose without it being told what its purpose is. Animals in general, just their purpose is to live. Certain animals, like humans in general, find purpose for themselves. They decide what is of value. But Mewtwo is such a tragic being, and it's tragic in all forms. In the anime, it seems, even to some degree in the game, it seems like sad. But yeah, but in this, it's not even complete yet. In this, it's like being created in such a weird way. I would never expected, like, okay, so when I'm thinking like gene splicing and Mewtwo's creation, I'm thinking it's gonna, like, okay, you have the cells, it'll slowly, even if it's being made in a tube, it'll be created in a similar way that, like, any other animal is being created. It'll sell out, it'll eventually start building body parts and whatever, and then it'll eventually turn into whatever the end product is. In this, it seems like if they're like 90, they're like 85% done actually in this. It seems like it's missing maybe an arm and a leg. Maybe there's some internal stuff that it's missing too, but basically the like entire left half of it is almost complete, and then the right half is like still missing some parts. So like I'm wondering what exactly they need in order to complete that. I'm also wondering, is it alive yet? Is it even sentient? Like at this point, is it just a husk and then it hasn't even like come to life, or is it just like suffering in this tube? And that's really sad to me, honestly. But I still think it's super interesting. I just really like this chapter, honestly. I don't know, like, I'm trying to, like, I don't want to push myself to say things just to say things, but I really like this chapter a lot. But yeah, those are my thoughts. What do you guys think of this chapter? Did you find it fun, interesting? I, for one, found it kind of exciting almost. I was not expecting a Mewtwo and Mew kind of subplot in this chapter. I thought it was just going to be like, oh, Red going after Green, he catches Green, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But this was like there's a whole other facet to it. So what do you guys think of this chapter again? Let me know down in the comments. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video. And remember to subscribe if you haven't already so you can keep up with future videos. I will see you guys next time in the next chapter. Bye-bye.